Then came in 1986 National Policy on Education. Then in 1986 National Policy on Education modified in 1992, and there was a program of action in 1992. Then the free and compulsory education policy came into existence. So we have that education policy which is continuing. Education to all, especially. That policy is continuing. So if you look at the what is the main aim of any policy or public policy? So education policy, new education policy 2020 is a public policy. Likewise, environmental policy we have, industrial policy we have agricultural policy. Now a few agricultural policies have been passed in the parliament, and a state level agricultural policy or land policy, land act is passed in discussed in state assembly, Karnataka state assembly. Likewise, there are so many policies. So these policies have certain objectives. What are these objectives? The first and foremost objective of any policy is that a policy objective is a desired outcome that policymakers wish to achieve. So the government or the policymakers, they want to achieve some desired outcome. Say, for example, we want to create a park. We want to create a good education system. We want to create a industrial hub. We want to create a godowns for agriculture crops, agriculture commodities to be stored. Likewise, we have several policies, and these policies are mainly aimed at to have an outcome-based policies, we call it. So therefore, the policy target is specific level or rate set for the chosen objectives. So therefore, every policy has a target, or it fixes the rate at which we can achieve the policy goals. For example, in India, we wanted to achieve 100% literacy by 2000, but still we could not achieve 100% literacy rate. But still we are having literacy rate around 60% or 65%. That too, those who sign, they are considered as literate. They don't know even the reading, but they can sign or read one or two letters. They are also considered as literate. That is not the actual literate. So in this way, our the definition of literate itself is having the problem. So in this way, the policies are mainly goal oriented. They want to achieve some goals, targets. Just like NCC, you always aim for a target. Likewise, the policies are also aimed at some targets to reduce poverty, increase employment opportunities. Likewise, there are so many goals of public policies. So likewise, education policy has its own goals. So public policies are formulated and implemented in order to attain the objectives which the government has in view for the ultimate benefit of the masses in general. These policies clearly spell out the programs of government. Why these policies are implemented? So they have specific goals. So one among the best or specific goal is that to create a welfare society, ultimately to benefit the society at large. These policies are created mainly to benefit the society, or to have a welfare, or the equal society, equalities of opportunities, to create equalities of opportunities to all. So this is how the policy is desired to achieve some targets. So the public policy is positive in the sense that it depicts the concern of the government and involves its action to a scrupulous problem on which the policy is made. It has the sanction of law and authority behind it. So when the public policy is made, first they discuss and evaluate and study the issues or problems the society is facing. Say, for example, the society in India is facing several educational problems. The educational problems are many: high rate of illiteracy, unemployment, and good education is not provided. There is no access to education, and the vocational education is not given. That is, skill development is not given. Likewise, there are several problems we are facing in India. Therefore, in order to overcome all these problems, so the education policy is aimed at to achieve having 100% literacy, to create more employment opportunities, to create skill development in India, and develop the quality education in India, or in terms of achieving excellence in education, they are trying to incorporate all these objectives in the new education policies. So when we are discussing about public policy or education policy, they have specific goals or targets. So most importantly, the fundamental duties of the government is to meet the essential needs of the society, such as food, very essential, shelter, the housing, the employment, education, health, water supply, energy, good governance, etc., the timely delivery of services, etc. These play a very important role. Among these, education also plays an important role. So therefore, the benefit of public policies would be higher than the cost. When we are framing the public policies, we should evaluate, we should weigh, we should compare whether these public policies are creating more benefits to the society than costs. So if they are creating more benefits over a period of time, then the policy will be highly successful. Or in other words, if they are creating costs to the society, there will be a policy failure. So there are several policy failures in India, even though the public policies are very good. There is a popular saying in India: we are good planners but bad implementers. So we plan very well, but when it comes to implementation, the policies completely fail to meet the targets or meet the goals. So there we are failing in India because of several reasons. Maybe there may be no fund availability, or allocated fund may not be utilized properly, and the desired target is not met on time. Likewise. So therefore, the public policies should maximize benefits and minimize cost. When we are talking about cost, that is maximize social benefits. The society at large should get the benefits out of public policy and not the private benefits. But some of the policies in India we had in the earlier and even today are benefiting the private people, benefiting the corporates, benefiting the rich people, benefiting the haves, not the have-nots. Likewise, the public policies are framed in such a way that they should maximize the social benefit rather than maximizing the private benefits, only few individuals. But this is the cry all over India now. Almost all the policies, even the agriculture policy and land policy we are bringing in the both parliament as well as state assemblies, they are suspected to help the rich people, help the corporate sectors or industrialists, likewise. So that maximizes the benefit of the private people over maximizing the benefits of the society at large. So therefore, when we are framing the public policies, we have to keep in mind the fundamental objectives of the fundamental rights of the people enshrined in the Indian Constitution. What are these fundamental rights we have? Right to equality, equality of opportunities, equality, right to freedom, freedom of expression, right against exploitation from any form of exploitation, right to freedom of religion. We can have our own religion. And cultural and educational rights, we have a educational rights. We can demand these educational rights from the government. Right to constitutional remedies, if you have some issues, we can seek the remedies through the constitutional measures such as law. So in this way, when we are making the policy, we have to keep in mind the fundamental rights are not being affected. We ensure the fundamental rights. We give access to free and fair access to education, at least for primary and secondary education up to 16th or 18th years of age. So afterwards, it is not compulsory, but we can have education by meeting the cost of the education. So at least up to 18 years, it is the fundamental duty of the Indian government to give free and fair education. So what are the issues we are facing in Indian education? What are the problems we are facing? Lack of government investment on education. You know that there is a complete inequality in accessing education in rural areas and urban areas. And public sector, public or government schools and colleges, the education is very poor when compared to the private education. So there is a lack of government investment on education. On the one hand, the students who are studying in public schools and colleges, they don't have quality education, whereas the students who are studying in private schools and colleges, they have a very good education, quality education. So this diversity or disparity is there in our education system. And we have mass illiteracy because most of the people who are nearly 60% of the people are residing in villages. They are not literate. There is a mass illiteracy in rural areas and even urban areas, where the slum population, they don't have literacy. Poor quality and access to education. Even though we have education, we have a building, but there will be no teacher to teach the lessons. So likewise, even though school is there, there is no power. Even though power is there, there is no other access, modern access. Like now, due to pandemic, everyone is now online. Say, for example, we are online, but when we go to rural areas, so the students cannot have access to online classes because they don't have computers, they don't have laptops, they don't have power, they don't have technique or access to these facilities, internet facilities. So in this way, on the one hand, the people who are rich can have access to online classes. Those who are poor, they cannot have access to education under the COVID period. So in this way, the educational disparity is very high in India. So further, the education is not affordable, non-affordable. It means that the education is very costly. Say, for example, those students who want to study or pursue education in some technical courses like engineering, professional courses like doctors and other courses, they have to pay huge amount of fees. So where the parents will bear that such cost? So the higher education in India is not affordable. Therefore, most of the students who drop out at the PUC level, at the degree level, they don't want to pursue higher education because of higher cost. So the education which is given by the Indian educational institutions, they are not able to generate employment opportunities. So therefore, we have highest in unemployment, educated unemployment in India. So that is really worrisome. So even though we have a good pool of talents, we call it demographic dividend. This is working age population is very high in India when compared to other countries like USA, European countries and UK and other countries where the aged population is, the ratio of aged population is more. So the overall, the education in India is very general type of education, not vocational. Skill development of the education. When the student wants to get the job, they need training, they need skill. But the education system in India, which is not creating that skill. So there is a lot of gap between the education we got in theory, but practice it is totally different. So as a result, the most of the students, they won't get the job after the completion of their courses. So expensive higher education, especially in India, higher education is very, very expensive, and especially in private universities and colleges. Further inequality in access to education, the poor, when compared to the rich, do not have access to education. So in this way, the Indian education system is having several problems. As a result, we have failed to achieve a desired target or desired goal of achieving the 100% literacy, creating more employment opportunities, a skill India, Indian youths, and also a excellence in education. So therefore, the government thought over having a new education policy. It was drafted in 1999, and in 2020 it is being implemented. So what should be the objectives of education policy? The education policy, one, already I have explained, it should maximize the social benefit, minimize the social cost, or maximize the social benefits and minimize the private benefits. So the education, the objectives of education policy should have free and fair education to all up to PUC, affordable education, equality of opportunity. They should create employment opportunity. There should be corruption-free environment to join the job or recruitment. Nowadays, you know that almost all the organizations, especially public sector organizations, corruption is involved in recruitment. KPSC, for example. So likewise. So the education, overall education, that should transform human capabilities, both physical and mental capability. And the person who gets the education should be proud of himself to lead a better life after the completion of education, and he should get the decent job and should lead a decent life. So that is the main objectives of the education policy. So what is happening in India is completely completely disheartening. So after completion of the courses or education, one cannot be ensured job. And you know that most of the, in recent times, you might have seen even PhD holders, they joined the job of Mahatma Gandhi Narega scheme. They are going and doing the labor work. Even PhD holders, master degree holders, and engineers, they are doing the clerical jobs, security jobs. So what type of education we have in India if they do not provide employment opportunities and reshape the transformation of a human being to a dignified life, to lead a dignified life? So education is, we understood that education is fundamental for achieving full human potential, developing an equitable and just society, and promoting national development. Education plays a very important role in development of the nation. So you know that there are three important resources which contribute to economic development. One among them is human capital. The other two capitals are natural capital and man-made capital. So human capital plays a very important role in economic development of any nation. If you take America, the economic development which is taking place in America is mainly due to contributions made by the human capital. Of the total capitals, the contribution of human capital is nearly 80%. The remaining two capitals, man-made capital and the natural capital, contributes 20%. So that plays an important role, how the human development or education or human capital plays an important role in economic development. So therefore, The National Education Policy 2020 proposes the revision and revamping of all aspects of education structure, including its regulation and governance, to create a new system that is aligned with aspirational goals of 21st century education, including Sustainable Development Goal 4, while building upon India's traditions and value system. So therefore, the new education policy envisages to have a complete restructuring of Indian education, revamping of Indian education system, including its regulations, governance, and almost it wants to create a new system of education in place. So why this they want to achieve? They have aspirational goal of 21st century education. So education in 21st century is completely different when compared to education earlier, because we are in a globalized world. The technology is transforming very high. You know that we are using robots and artificial intelligence and big data and etc. So in this way, the technology is transforming the economies and human beings. So therefore, we need to have a high targets, or we need to revamp our education policy to meet the 21st century needs of the global economy. So, as per the goal 4 of Sustainable Development Goal, the Global Education Development Agenda reflects the goal 4 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by India in 2015, seeks to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2030. By 2030, the new education policy wants to achieve 100% target that all should get equitable and quality education. So this is a big aspirations on the part of government of India. Whether we can achieve by 2030 the equitable quality education to all is a big question. But still, the new education policy wants to achieve that, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education to all. So the rich heritage of further what new education policy talks about: the rich heritage of ancient and eternal Indian knowledge and thought has been a guiding light for this policy. The pursuit of knowledge, jnana, wisdom, pragya, and truth, satya, was always considered in Indian thought and philosophy as the highest human goal. So, in the new education policy, they evoked the ethos of ancient Indian literature, including Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Rig Veda, Yajurveda. There are so many Vedas. So they want to have a education in India based on the our ancestral ethos. Ethos are knowledge, jnana, wisdom, pragya, and truth, satya. So how these can be incorporated in our education is a big question, but still they want to achieve this knowledge-based society based on the Indian philosophical ethos. But it is very difficult to ensure it in the education policy. It is a challenge because we are living in a corrupt world where everyone wants to maximize their profit. And how they will reduce these corrupt practices itself is a big question, because all the educational institutions are corrupt. They make use money out of education. So the goal of education itself is wrong as per the policies they prescribed. See, the education is to increase the horizon of knowledge, but it is not the opportunity to make money. But what is happening in India is that they make a lot of money out of education, including convents and other educational institutes, except public institutes. So the new education policy further envisages that the national education policy aims to reorient the education system towards meeting the needs of the 21st century by achieving the twin objectives of inclusion and excellence. So, all should get education, all should get not only education but quality education, that is, inclusion and excellence in education. It sets the vision of developing an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing quality education to all. So, providing quality education requires complete revamping of the skill, both at the tutorial level as well as at the student level. So, including changing the syllabus, whole structure of the syllabus, the technique in which we teach, and everything matters. How we ensure quality education is a big question, but the new education policy tries to achieve a equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing quality education. So, the strength of this policy, according to the policymakers, is the recognition of education as a public good. So it has been considered as public good, but after late, it is considered as a merit good. It can be given by both public as well as private institutions. So as a result, there is a complete division of education quality in India between public sector education and private sector education. So the policy recognizes it is a public good, but it cannot be seen as public good when we uh, uh, get into access to education. It cannot be ensured as public good. It is a private good. Sometimes it is a merit good. It's a both public as well as private goods. So, if you consider the situation, educational status in India, if you look at the allocation of public funds to education system, it is very, very negligible, especially to higher education, especially after the but in recent years, the previous governments have ensured that Sarva Shikshana Abhiyana, that is education to all. So that has become very popular educational policy, very successful education policy in India. Everyone gets education. They have a right to education policy. So even the students can opt the school, private school, where the government pays all the fees. And so in this way, the earlier governments tried to achieve a 100% education through Sarva Shikshana Abhiyana and through right to education policies. But still the gaps are existing as usual, because given the social and economic conditions, many parents, they are not sending their children for educational purpose. So meeting their basic needs, that is food, shelter, and other needs, are more important than meeting the educational needs of the children. This is the situation in India because of the socio-economic background. Very poor, majority of them are poor. Nearly 48% of the people in India are below poverty line, as per the multidimensional poverty approach. The multidimensional poverty approach speaks about per capita income, lack of education, lack of health facilities, lack of water, lack of sanitation, and lack of other basic facilities. So, in this way, new education policy wants to achieve a wide-ranging changes in new higher education. So, therefore, it wants to have a Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog, which cover a period of time as roles and functions to stabilize, be given constitutional status through an act of parliament. So instead of UGC, they would like to have a Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog. It will be supported by the constitutional status through the act of parliament. And the main and foremost importance of the new education policy is that it envisages for employability, skill development, and collaboration with industry. So it wants to have employment opportunities to be created for the educated youths, skill development through vocational training at the schools level and colleges, and have a collaboration with the industry to, after the completion of education, they can absorbed, the students can be absorbed in industry. So in this way, there are good points in the education policy, new education policy. It is highly aspirational education policy, we can call it. So what are these targets? Whether these targets can be realized, one can think over, but they have some targets. What are these targets? By 2022, all schools will have electricity. You know that many schools are in dilapidated, highly in destructive conditions or poor conditions. So it wants to achieve all by 2022, all schools will have electricity. And the second thinking is that Indian languages must be heavily promoted again with the new vigor. So it wants to promote Indian languages, that is the languages of the states should be encouraged over the other languages, English language. So this is somehow not encouraging, but encouraging local languages is always welcome. But at the same time, since we are in a globalized world, we should encourage the other languages, especially English. So otherwise, there will be a lot of diversification between rural and urban students. Urban students, they learn English in the first standard itself or in the LKG itself. But if the rural candidates, students, they learn English at fifth standard, there will be a huge skill gap in learning the languages. So other targets are all schools will also be provided with computers and internet connectivity for pedagogical purposes. Oh, it is very ambitious. All the schools will be provided computer and internet connectivity, infrastructure and materials to support differently abled students, safe drinking water on the school premises, functioning toilets with running water, separate for girls and boys, and basic hand washing facilities by 22. It is very, very good objective or target by the central government, but how they will achieve is the only question being needs to be asked for ourselves. So then by 2024, assuming 2019 as the starting point, there will be 5 world-class liberal arts universities. So within 24, now we are in 20, within 24, we will have 5 world-class liberal arts universities modeled on Nalanda and Ivy League schools. How it can be achieved? It is also a big question. World-class liberal arts, 5 world-class liberal arts universities. So the other targets, there is the hope that by 2025, all students are likely to have access to connected personal computing devices. Further, at least 50% of all learners are to have access to vocational learning by the same year. By 2030, all school teachers will require a 4-year liberal integrated BA degree. But that year, all children should have an equal opportunity to learn and thrive, so that participation and learning outcomes are equalized across all genders and social categories. Further, all districts will have higher education institutions like universities, which will be completely autonomous, free from government intervention in terms of recruitment of faculty and determining salary structures. So likewise, the new education policy has several targets. By 2035, the gross enrollment ratio for higher education is expected to be at least 50%. Now it is around 20%. How it can be ensured 50%? It's a big question. By 2030, 100% literacy should be achieved for youth and adults. This is another big challenge. Higher education institutes are likewise expected to engage with community. The higher education institutes should interact with villagers and community, and there should be integration of community based learning to the universities. So the immediate and rapid restructuring of higher education is assigned priority in practice. So in this way, the new education policy 2020 has several ambitions, several targets, several restructuring policies. So how it can be achieved is a big question. So apart from that, we have a different schooling system for the primary and secondary education. You know, all those things. Those things may not be discussed in detail because time is very apt. So if you look at the statements made by Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the chairman of the New Education Policy Draft Committee, the chairman Kasturirangan NEP says that NEP is to attempt to create a new system that is aligned with the aspirational goals of 21st century education while remaining consistent with India's traditions and value systems. Teachers must be grounded in Indian values, ethos, knowledge, and traditions while also being well versed in the latest advances in education and pedagogy. He refers to the Constitution while redesigning NEP 2020, democratic outlook and commitment to the liberty and freedom, equality, justice, and fairness, embracing diversity, plurality, and inclusion, humanness, and fraternity spirit, social responsibility and the spirit of service, ethics of integrity and honesty, scientific temper, and commitment to rational and public dialogue, peace, social action through constitutional means, unity and integrity of the nation, and their true rootedness and pride in India with a forward looking spirit to continuously improve as a nation. So, this is the constitution which provides the what is education. So he refers to that constitutional message, and he draws that to a new education policy. So it is well documented in Constitution what type of education one should have. It should have a scientific temper. So it should have cultural ethos or religious ethos. So at the same time, it should have a scientific temper. How this policy, new education policy ensures is a big question. So faculty who train future teachers are expected to be rooted in constitutional values. So therefore, the faculty are asked to be trained in a way the constitutional values are imbibed in their teaching. So this policy emphasizes a law education that is informed and illuminated with constitutional values of justice, social and economic and political, and directed towards national reconstruction through instrumentation of democracy, rule of law, and human rights. The law curriculum has to fall back upon the culture and traditions of people, the history of legal institutions, and victory of dharma over adharma, writ large in Indian literature, mythology, written largely in Indian literature and mythology. So it wants to have a fair society. See, it means that dharma means a fair society, a equitable access to resources, a sharing of the resources, equitable sharing of resources. So we should not have a rich controlling the poor. So they should share the resources. So likewise, it has a very beautiful ideas. New education policy has a beautiful ideas, but how to achieve them it's a big question. But in comes to girls' education, women's education is not regarded as a right, but it is justified primarily in terms of the supposedly greater good it will yield. So they don't directly refer girls have a right to education, but they are justifying in terms of greater good will happen if they get education. Girls' access to education is the clearest path to disturb poverty and violence, promote community health and well-being, and foster development dividends that carry on it to the next generation. But what needs to be done here is that the girls should have education. They should have right to education. They should compulsory do education. So that type of force is not there. But they recognize the role of women in economic development and education, how it transforms the society, etc. But what is missing is that the girls' education is must. So all children will be part of an inclusive and equitable society when they grow up, which in turn will raise the peace, harmony, and productivity of the nation. So those having given gender identities, including women, transgender, given socio-cultural identities such as SC, ST, OBC, Muslims, migrant communities, given special needs such as learning disabilities, and given socio-economic conditions such as urban poor. So, but the new education policy is not very clear how these disabled women or the students, SCSTs, OBCs, and Muslims and migrant communities are given a proper education, how they will be uplifted, how they will be given a good education, whether through fellowships or through hostel facilities or through teaching aids or through special training or through special teaching. We don't know, but they want to achieve this one. So, amount. So, they talk specifically about scholarships, but they don't specify how much scholarship will be given, and what's the allocation of fund for scholarship in the budget, etc. So there is also no mention about reservation for employment opportunities for weaker sections of the society, such as women, SC, ST, and physically disabled, and transgenders, and others. So how they can be brought to the equality of others. So that is missing. No mention of on reservation either for students or for teachers and other employees of the educational institutions at all levels. Reservation has made education and employment available to some of the most underprivileged and has helped transform lives. Private higher education shall not be mandated to adhere to reservation guidelines other than those stated in the policy and their formative acts. So this gives an idea that the private educational institutions need not follow any reservation. So this will hamper a huge sections of the society where women, the physically challenged, and SC, STs, OBCs, and others may not get opportunity to have reservation. So the languages of India is proposed for all the students from grades 6 to 8. That's a welcome step, but at the same time, the other languages should also be given importance. So in this way, the policy aims at many good things to be achieved. Complete transformation of the education system in India, and give a very good quality education and quality training, skill development, and imbibing new technology in the skill development, etc. and etc. But how it can achieve is the big question, because we need to have a universalization of access, ensure equity and inclusion, bring back 2 crores out of school children, attain sustainable development goal of retaining all children in schools until completion of secondary education, because you know that child labor is very high in India. So how to retain the children? If you give only education, they cannot be go for schools. So along with that, there should be some economic packages to their parents. Then only they send their children to school. For example, the migrant laborers, they migrant from Orissa, Bihar, even from Karnataka, Bidar, Raichur, Ballari, and other places. They come along with their children. So the children help their parents. They don't go to school, but how to retain them in school is a big question. So improve quality and achievement of learning outcomes. Focus on 21st century skills in teaching, learning, and assessment. Resource share school complexes. Effective governance. Separation of powers and common rules norms. Overcoming the language barriers in learning. Common standards for public and private school education. So all these, there are many challenges, but In order to overcome all these challenges, we need to gear up. We need to be very strong. We need to be the machinery, the especially the administrative machinery, should be very strong to achieve these goals. Otherwise, this will be another futile exercise, another failure of the policy, new education policy. Apart from that, there should be freedom of expression. You know that constitutional rights when we are talking. So the student organizations should be recognized. So the government may not give importance to organizations, students organizations, just like in JNU and other campuses, student organizations are beaten up and their high-handedness was there. So the students leadership quality will grow when there is organization. They fight for some leadership qualities. They so in this way, the education policies should develop the leaders. We in India, the one of the main reasons for failure of these policies is that we don't have leaders, visionary leaders. So therefore, even today, we don't accept these politicians as leaders. They are just politicians. They come for their own benefits. They loot money. Nobody is serving for the society, welfare of the society. So there are no leaders in India actually. So therefore, the student organizations should be given recognitions where the students they themselves become leaders. They have aspirations for India's economic development, aspirations for their own development. So unionization is very important, and they should be given. There is no mention in the new education policy. There is complete silence on that. So in this way, the new education policy is wants to achieve excellence and access to education, but at the same time, it should not neglect the poorer sections of the society and neglect the freedom of expression. It should not. It should also allocate higher budgetary provision for to achieve all these goals by 2030. It is not easy. So there are many challenges, but the aspirations can be met if they are determined, highly determined. So with this, India needs to double its investment in education to 20% of its public expenditure or 6% of the gross domestic product over the next decade. Amplify the right to education by extending it to all age group 3 to 18 years, and enhance the gross enrollment ratio in higher education from about 26% now to 50%. So in this way, we can achieve this new education policy goals and targets if you allocate more money, if you are highly determined to achieve and transform the India as a skill India, a skill-based India, a India with demographic dividend, a India with quality education and quality people, not only quality in education but also health. So overall development of India depends on how we implement the new education policy, which gives 100% access to good quality education and employability, and also a knowledge development. With this, I stop my lecture. Over to you, Professor Nagraj.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you have any questions,
So I'll put the welcome at vote of thanks address, and then I'll give the participants chance to ask questions.
okay.
Sir, today, after 34 years, the government of India has introduced a new bill of new education policy. On behalf of that, to know what is new education policy and to what we call volunteer to spread this message, what is new education policy, the National College Basavanagudi, in association with the 7th Karnataka Battalion CC of Bangalore B Group, with the support of our commanding officer and all officials of the Bangalore and about autonomy of the institutions, and also you with a particular aspect to higher education, right? How this new education policy affects, what are the merits and demerits you have explained, and also the expected outcome of a new education policy, right? And also simultaneously, right, at the last you have explained that, right, no recognition was given to students' organization. That also you have explained. So thank you very much, sir. So you have given complete outcome, right? What is present education in India? What are the aspects that we have to concentrate after introducing new education policy in India? What are the factors to be borne in mind by the government while introducing this policy? So thank you very much for your wonderful and informative talk, sir. Once again, by accepting our invitation, you have accepted our invitation and came here to throw some light on this new education policy. Once again, on behalf of National College, on behalf of 7th Karnataka Battalion, Bangalore B Group, right, on behalf of the commanding officer and principal of National College, and myself, I take this opportunity. It is a great pleasure for me to thank you for enlightening us on this new education policy. Thank you very much. Now session is open for questions. Now the session is open for questions. Any questions from the participants? You can unmute yourself and you can ask the questions. Participants, any questions? The speaker is here. You can talk to him.
Students, you might be having some questions in your mind. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Who is this?
NG Ranganath from Raichur, 35 Karnataka Battalion.
Right.
In 9, 10, 11, we will conduct the board exam after completion of 10 or 11.
Pardon?
In 9, 10, 11, we will conduct the board 9, 10, 11. We will conduct the board exam after completion of 10th or 11th.
So that I don't have idea. That is still I am also in doubt or confusion.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Mostly they conduct 11th, I think.
11, sir. 5 plus 3 plus 3.
Yeah.
It will become 11.
Yes.
Sir, it is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4.
It means 11th, no?
11.
Yeah.
So any other questions, students? Youngsters have to come forward to ask the questions. The session is open for you.
Hope they listen to my lecture.
Sir, this is Ravi Kumar from 35 Karnataka Battalion.
Yes, sir.
Sir, just now the NG Ranganath has asked the question of that high school 9th, 10th.
Yes.
But it is not applicable for that persons. Only the higher education is included in this.
Tell me, sir, again.
Only the higher education 10 plus 2 plus 3 is included in this. But the NG Ranganath has asked 9th, 10th. 9th is not included in higher education. Only it is a new education policy.
No. What he has asked is the examination conducted by the board, no? He was asking, say, for example, now the board conducts 10th exam.
Yeah.
But the new education policy, the student will be not in PUC. You will be in higher secondary education till 11th.
11th till 11th.
No, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Listening. You tell me, sir. No problem. Okay, network problem, I think.
Yeah, he did not understand what Rangnath asked. Yeah.
So, any other questions? Okay, shall we finish this session?
Yes.
Sir, Dr. Krishna Raj, sir, thank you very much once again. It is a great pleasure for me.
Thank you.
For giving such a wonderful talk on new education policy. So, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much, sir. We will close the session, sir.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I, Chirantan Raj from National College, would like to thank Major R.N. Nagaraj sir for providing us such a great opportunity to conduct the webinar, and also our 7 Karnataka Battalion CO for providing us such a great opportunity to know more about the latest national education policy. Thank you, one and all.
I thank each and every cadet who attended the webinar, and also every participant will receive e-certificates who have filled the feedback form. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for wonderful organization.
Thank you, sir.